the community, but it was also an opportunity for some, as some saw it, as a way to move out of the community and begin the process that Dr. King so often talked about, began the integrated process. So that is a little bit of the history behind it. That is also a little bit of the history of how this came about. This was not an idea that I brought about. It was not an idea that I created or even thought about. As a matter of fact, part of the reason why Dr. Thompson is here today, my colleague on the City Council, is he was the first to introduce this measure about 7 years ago. It didn't gain any traction at the time, but it was something that he felt very passionate about, because there are opportunities, I think, with the renaming to do some things with young people. One of the things we want to do, if we are successful in convincing you that the name change is necessary and appropriate, is to do essay contests and so forth. And I will let Dr. Thompson talk about that. But I want to close by giving some of my own thoughts about it. I mean, what we're talking about here is a vision that many of us believe is a really great vision. I'm a member of a group called the Turnback Tax Committee, where the legislature gives a certain amount of dollars to certain census tracts in northeast and southeast Omaha to provide dollars and resources for historical organizations. Our group has made it a point to focus in on and help provide and move forward the land where Malcolm X was born. In my dream of dreams, I would like to see the Martin Luther King Expressway, but I would also like to see later on, and this will be more of an Omaha issue than it would be a state issue, but I would like to also see us change the name of Bedford or one other street and call that Malik Shabazz Road. So that not only would we have representation of civil rights heroes in Omaha where they currently don't exist and exist in other places, it would be an opportunity, and it would be probably a talking point to say that we are the only city that has a Martin Luther King Expressway that is crossed by a Malik Shabazz or a Malcolm X street. So that's kind of the dream that I have, and I'm going to, if you all have any questions, I want to stay here and be able to answer those, but that's just kind of an overview of how this happened. It's an overview of the history, and it's also a reflection of a dream that I and other people have of really making the names Martin Luther King and more specifically Malcolm X, who was born in Omaha, become prominent in our community, and people can be proud. We can begin to have discussions. We can begin to have dialogue. We can begin to work with young people in a number of different ways. I think a statement was attributed to me that I never made, and that was this would solve gang violence or gang problems. I don't think it will do that, but I do think it will give us an opportunity to start turning things around. We can continue to look at the North Freeway as a negative if we want to. We can continue to be angry, we can continue to be frustrated, or we can decide that we want to move ahead and move in a different direction and be a little bit more proactive and be a little bit more positive and take a little bit more control of what happens in our community. With that, I'll stop and let Dr. Thompson. I'm sorry.
Councilman Gray,
yes.
Would you do me one favor?
Yes.
I don't think for the record that I asked you to identify yourself when you
right.
started. Would you please do that for the purpose of our record?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. My name is Ben Gray. I reside at 5425 4th Street. I am the city councilman for the 2nd District of the City of Omaha.
Thank you very much. I think that we'll pose questions until we hear from Dr. Thompson, and then maybe we can do questions at that time.
Okay.
Is that okay?
That's fine, but I know that there's some in opposition, and I would want you to hear them as well.
All right. We'll hear everybody, and then we'll open it up for questions.
Thank you.
That's all right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. And Dr. Thompson, would you please identify yourself?
Franklin Thompson, 1025 Beverly Drive, and I'm the city councilman for District 6 in Omaha.
Thank you.
My comments will be brief. The councilman has already said that it's a thing that's steeped in controversy, and I have personal experience with that. And as Mr. Gray said, we've had people who were for and against the highway being built back in the 70s. I lived in a house that was 1 block away from where it was built, so that house was able to be safe. My grandmother, however, was 1 block west of me, and then she was displaced. And so we had in our family pretty mixed feelings about that. On one hand, we understood the progress that could potentially come in terms of businesses being able to come in and you're having access, transportation access to that area a little bit easier than what was there. But at the same time, there were bad feelings. I remember being a student at UNL, and during that time, we debated it in college. And I happened to be on the side that I did not want to build. And the various leaders in our state representing our area, I sided with them. I knew that as I grew older that I'd see the pros and the cons, that there would be things that were pro and con. And even today, it's not necessarily an either-or situation. It's some things about the highway are good, some things about the highway are not good. But I do kind of have a hole in my heart in that my grandmother was displaced, and she ended up moving to Portland. And at that time, I was an emancipated youth raising myself. And I really needed her to be here at that time. And having her displaced really caused a little bit of a problem. I also felt that some of my friends and colleagues at Tech High School, we kind of felt that some of the things that we had built in terms of the community was kind of divided by that structure. And so the camaraderie in the community, the feeling of community was kind of dissipated in a way. And so there were pros and cons. And even today, there are pros and cons. But I'd like to say that there's a way to deal with that. When you have issues where people are still debating pro and con, you try to find ways to heal. I'm all about healing. I'm not the greatest politician in the world. In fact, I consider myself an educator who happens to be lucky to have a chance to be a politician. There are other politicians even in this room who are far superior than I am. But one of the things I do understand is working with young people. And I'm a man that uses symbols a lot. And I'm able to use symbols very, very successfully. I just received an email from a student at UNO yesterday. And that student basically says, thank you for the way that you use symbols in class to help us realize things we haven't known before. In fact, her statement is, quote, you turned me from an ignorant, unexposed white girl to a better educated, changed woman who thinks about nothing, who thinks about the other sides of minority issues. And so, 35 years of teaching, I've been able to have those kinds of testimonies. So when I talk about symbols to the average common person on the street, they may say, well, that won't solve a problem. Using symbols won't solve issues. But what they do is allow me to do some powerful, powerful teaching. And what I like to do is to use the symbol